I've done a lot of movies, and I remember them all, too. One of my first appearances in films was with Laurel and Hardy.
Daughter then made it disappear. For 4 decades, no one knew where it went or why he hid it. When collectors finally tracked it down, they opened the trunk and found remnants of affairs with some of Hollywood's biggest names, proof of his darkest habits, and a piece of evidence from that 1948 arrest that was never supposed to survive. What was inside explained the man Hollywood never fully understood. Robert Mitchum was born. Robert Charles Der Mitchum on August 6, 1917 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And from the very start, his life carried weight. His mother was Anne Harriet Gunderson, a Norwegian immigrant trying to hold a family together. And his father was James Thomas Mitchum, a shipyard and railroad worker who did hard work for small pay. Then everything cracked open early. When Robert was just 2 years old, his father was killed in a railroad accident. And in one hit, his mother became a widow with 3 children and a budget that never stretched far enough. From that point, nothing felt settled. His mother took odd jobs and kept moving, always chasing the next small chance at stability, but the constant worry was still there in the house. Robert grew up in a working-class world where adults looked tired and money disappeared fast. He carried the shock of losing his father even though he was too young to fully understand it. Still, the absence shaped him. Later, he would talk about how his mother's constant stress and family's tight finances pushed him toward independence and also pushed him into distrust. When you grow up watching rules fail your family, you start questioning every rule that comes your way. So, the moves kept coming. After his father's death, the family shifted between Bridgeport, New York, and Delaware. And later, there was a British stepfather in the mix, too. Each new place was supposed to be a fresh start, but for Robert, it often felt like one more stop where he was expected to behave and stay quiet. He did not. He clashed with authority fast, and he clashed with his stepfather, too. And that tension turned into a pattern that followed him from home to school and back again. By the time he was 12, his mother tried a different plan and sent him to live with his grandparents in Felton, Delaware, hoping the change would calm him down. Instead, the friction got worse. He fought the principal and got expelled from middle school. And it was not a small incident that was quickly forgotten. It became a sign of who he was becoming. Then the family landed in New York's Hell's Kitchen and the trouble did not fade with the new address. Mitchum attended Heron High School, but within months he was expelled again after another fight. Now the story was not just about a kid acting out. It was about a boy slipping out of the normal path completely, without steady school, without calm at home. He started drifting between relatives. And sometimes he drifted into the street. That cycle hardened him. Every expulsion made him feel even more separate from the world that kept telling him to obey. By his teenage years, he had stepped into the life of a drifter. He hopped freight trains across the United States and took whatever work could find. Not because it was a dream, but because it kept him alive. Headed ditch digging. He picked fruit. He washed dishes. He boxed. The pay was low and the days were rough. But the point was freedom. He wanted to live outside the rules that had chased him out of school and out of peace. And because this was the Great Depression era, the roads were full of people like him, hungry and moving, learning how to survive one day at a time. Mitchum later said those rail years taught him how to outsmart nature and society. And that is the kind of lesson that stays in your bones. Then came an episode that later got told as one of the wildest chapters in his early life. In the summer of 1933, when he was 14, he was arrested for vagrancy in Savannah, Georgia, and sentenced to a local chain gang at Chatham County Camp No. 1. There were claims that authorities tried to connect him to a shoe store robbery. Andy insisted he was innocent, even pointing out he was already locked up when the crime supposedly happened. After just a few days, he reportedly escaped from the chain gang and ran. Avina's gunfire rang out behind him, then hitchhiked back to Rising Sun, Delaware, where his family had moved. Whether you take every detail as clean fact or not, the impact is clear. The experience left him with a deep hatred of authority and the justice system. And it also taught him a harsh kind of street logic that would keep showing up in his life. There are stories that he later turned himself in for short stays just to get a meal and a bed, which says something about the kind of survival mindset he developed early. And even with all that roughness, he was not only fists in trouble. There was another side that surprised people. He wrote poetry as a child. And one of his poems was published in a local paper when he was 9 years old. So you had this strange mix living in the same body. A boy who could write, a boy who could fight, a boy who could vanish down the tracks and then come back with new bruises and new stories. He boxed semi-professionally, too, with claims of earning $25 a match. And later he spent time in Roosevelt's Civilian Conservation Corps doing hard work by day and boxing at night to blow off the pressure. That mix of poetry and brawling was not a phase. It was a clue to his personality. He wanted expression, but he also wanted escape. In 1933, his personal life took a turn that would shape the rest of his years. He met Dorothy Spence at a swimming pool near Camden, Delaware. He was 16 and she was 14. At the time, she was briefly dating his younger brother, John, and that set up tension right away. But Robert was drawn to her, and the pull did not fade. They stayed serious, and in 1940, they married when Dorothy was 20. The family strain lingered and John refused to attend the wedding and some rifts lasted for years. Still, Dorothy stayed with Robert through his disappearances, scandals, and betrayals. And their marriage lasted 57 years, all the way until his death in 1997. It began young, it began messy, and it failed anyway. By 1936, Mitchum followed his sister Julie to Long Beach, California. And the next shift came almost by accident. Julie was involved with the Players Guild and Robert joined the group. First as a stagehand and then as an occasional bit player. He made his debut in August 1937 and it did something to him. The stage gave him a place where his restlessness could become something useful. He even wrote 2 children's plays for the Guild, and he contributed song lyrics and monologues for Julie's nightclub performances. It was not the neat story of a trained actor climbing a ladder. It was a drifter stumbling into a doorway and realizing he could belong there. Then World War II pushed him into another kind of grind. He worked as a machine operator at Lockheed Aircraft doing exhausting shifts under constant noise and stress, and it tore him down. He suffered a nervous breakdown that caused temporary blindness and doctors linked it to the pressure of factory work. That moment mattered because it forced a choice. He could not keep living in a job that was crushing his body and mind. So when he recovered, he turned to California and went back toward acting, not as a hobby anymore, but as a way forward. The film work started small, uncredited roles, studio lots, faces that passed through the frame and disappeared. He worked at RKO and other places, picking up whatever parts he could. In 1943, he got a bit part in The Hop Along. Pa Smith, more relaxed, more settled in the rhythm of the camera. The lower budget westerns were not glamorous, but they taught him pacing, timing, and how to do more with less. And that became the key to his style. Because Mitchum's trademark was never loud, it was his sleepy, heavy-lit eyes. It was the slouch that looked casual but felt controlled. It was the dry delivery that made it seem like he was not trying even when he was. People called it lazy, but it was precision hiding behind ease. He once joked he had 3 expressions, looking left, right, or straight ahead. And he leaned into that idea, letting silence do work that other actors tried to force with speeches. He was tall, rugged, and calm. And the calm was the hook. That hook fit perfectly when film noir started rising. Mitchum moved into gritty crime dramas like Undercurrent in 1946, Crossfire in 1947, and Out of the Past in 1947, and it felt natural because his off-screen past already carried the same attitude. In Crossfire, he played a traumatized World War II veteran in a story that tackled anti-Semitism, and the tone matched the post-war mood. Then, Out of the Past, locked his place in noir history. He played Jeff Bailey, a man trying to hide from his past, running a gas station in a quiet town, hoping quiet could save him. It could not. The past pulled him back through a crime boss and a femme fatale Kathy Moffat played by Jane Greer. The film moved through flashbacks and betrayal and doomed love. And Mitchum's performance stayed cool and fatalistic without evidently stiff. He gave the feeling of a man who understood the trap and still walked into it. The final stretch leaves him with no clean exit. And that is why the film lingers. As these roles hit, the public started blending the man with the characters, the drifter history, the fights, the brushes with trouble. All off, it made his noir presence feel believable. He looked like someone who had lived through hard nights, not someone pretending. And then real life gave the myth gasoline. On August 31, 1948, Mitchum was arrested in Los Angeles on marijuana charges after police raided a gathering where he was with actress Leah Lettitz and others. The next day, September 1, 1948, police burst into a cottage at 8443, Rydeth Drive in Laurel Canyon and arrested Mitchum, Lettitz and 2 others. Reports describe it as the climax of an 8-month surveillance operation by the Los Angeles Police Narcotics Division with claims the house had been watched closely. The press was there fast and the story exploded into a full media spectacle. Headlines spread worldwide, photos followed him in handcuffs and the scandal became bigger than the details. The case went through the courts and on January 11, 1949, he was found guilty after pleading no contest to criminal conspiracy to possess marijuana. On February 9, 1949, he was sentenced to 1 year in county jail, but most of it was suspended and he was ordered to serve 60 days with 2 years of probation. He was released after about 47 to 50 days for good behavior. And he served time both in the county jail and at a prison farm near Castaic. Photos from that period became part of the legend. Mitchum in prison uniform, even milking a cow on the farm, turning punishment into a strange kind of publicity. Inside it, he was scared. He worried it would end his marriage to Dorothy and crush his career. At the time, he was separated from her, and the scandal felt like it could wipe out any chance of repair. Yet, he also carried defiance, admitting he had smoked marijuana for years, and acting as if he refused to beg for forgiveness. That mix of fear and bravado only made him more fascinating to the public, and the moral lesson the system seemed to want did not land the way they expected. Fan mail surged. The rebel image sold tickets. Instead of ending him, the scandal fed the persona that audiences already liked on screen. So, the thread stays unbroken. The boy who lost his father at 2 grew into the kid who fought principles. Then the teenager who rode freight trains. Then the young man who stumbled into theater. Then the worker who broke under factory pressure. Then the actor who made silence powerful. Then the star whose off-screen trouble turned into part of the brand. It is all connected. Each step pushes the next step forward. And when you look back at the whole run, the tough guy legend does not feel invented. It feels built year by year, scar by scar, all the way from Bridgeport in 1917 to the screen image that never needed to shout to take over the room. In 1955, Robert Mitchum walked into one of the strangest dark stories Hollywood ever dared to film. He played Harry Powell in Charles Laughton's The Night of the Hunter, a preacher who smiles while he hunts. The character was inspired by a real serial killer named Harry Powers. And Mitchum made him feel even more real by turning his hands into a warning. Love on one set of knuckles, hate on the other. Then he used those hands as part of his sermon, not to comfort people, but to control them. The movie sits in Depression-era America, where money feels like a ghost everyone is chasing. Powell marries a widow, slips into her home, and then starts circling her children because he believes they know where $10,000 is hidden. Money stolen by their late father. And Mitchum does not play the villain with loud anger. He plays him with patience. A low voice that sounds calm even when it is poisonous. A shadow that seems to arrive before the man. A stillness that makes every small movement feel dangerous. It is why people still talk about him as one of the most unforgettable villains ever put on screen. The weird part is the world did not know what to do with the film at first. It flopped on release and confused audiences with its surreal fairy tale feeling, and the numbers were ugly. About $10,000 worldwide. That is the kind of figure that can make a studio look away. But time did what opening weekend could not. Decades passed. Critics and film lovers kept circling back, and the movie slowly turned into a masterpiece. And right in the middle of that reputation sits Mitchum. Still cold, still smiling, still often called the most terrifying screen preacher